Hey everybody, it's Miss Sigmund here coming at you with another video lesson here for geometry. This is lesson 1-6. It's on deductive reasoning, probably one of my favorite aspects of geometry because this is where the magic happens. We are thinking about life, thinking about the world in a different way. And what we're doing here is we're giving our brain a workout and we're stimulating our brain and we're creating what we call dendrites in our brain. Now, dendrites are super important as they're the things that connect neurons in our brain, which of course is how we think. So a thought passes from neuron through dendrites into other neurons and around. So as we stimulate our brain and as we create more of these pathways, more of these branches, our thoughts can actually think faster across our brain. So studies have shown, many studies have shown that if you want to be better at anything that you're doing, if you want to be a better athlete, a better artist, a better musician, a better reader, a better writer, go over and take a geometry class. So we are all here in the right place and we are ready to give our brains a workout today and talk about deductive reasoning skills. These are things that you already have in your life already. We're just going to apply them to geometry and put names to them. So this first problem gives us a situation here. So we have a deck of 60 cards numbered 1 through 15 on one of 4 different shapes: triangle, circle, square, and pentagon. A teacher is going to select 5 cards and display 4 of those cards up, with the 5th one being covered. She tells her class what these 4 are. She says 2 of triangle, 3 of triangle, 5 of triangle, 7 of triangle. What is behind this last card that I'm holding? And some of her students there make a guess. Chen says the 5th card is 11, and Carolina says the 5th card has a circle. So think about this. Describe how each of these students may have reached their conclusion. What are they thinking? What are they thinking right here? How did they get 11 and circle? What are some possibilities for that 5th card? If you think about that, then maybe we can make a better guess, right? So here we go. Chen says the 5th card is 11. I can see where she thought that. I can see where we were going. We talked about prime and composite numbers in lesson 1-4. So when we're looking across, we're saying, well, 2 is a prime number, 3 is a prime number, 5 is a prime number, 7 is a prime number. So the next one, all of these are prime. I'm guessing the next one's going to be the next prime number, which would happen to be 11. Okay, so I can definitely see where she thought that. Carolina, on the other hand, I'm not so sure. All right, the teacher said that all the cards had the same shape, and then she guesses a circle. Not so good. The last card has to have a triangle on it because the teacher already said that there was all triangles. All of these cards had the same shape. So some other possibilities for that 5th card: any number 1 through 15 not already shown. And it has to be a triangle there. If we wanted to make better guess as to what that card was, maybe the teacher could say, is it even or odd? Is it above 7 or below 7? Is it 2 digits or 1 digit? Things like that. That would give us more information about what that card could possibly be. Then we could narrow it down a little bit further. Okay, so we're using these deductive reasoning skills, which is the process of reasoning using given and previously known facts to reach a logical conclusion. The book here is going to give us some examples with truth tables, which we looked at a little bit last class. So if we look at this truth table here, given that if P then Q is true, so given that conditional statement is true and the conclusion Q is also true, can we determine if the hypothesis is true? So we can use this truth table to figure it out. So we're going to look at the situations here where both of those conditions are met. So I'm going to say, here's the conclusion being true, and here's the conditional being true, true and true. And okay, the hypothesis is true here. All right, well, there's one other place where that situation happens. True and true right here. However, the hypothesis is false here. So because when P can be either true or false, because that hypothesis could be true or false, we can't determine what the hypothesis truth value is. We don't know. Okay, but what if instead What if instead I gave you the conditional, that the conditional is true, so if P then Q is true, and the hypothesis is true? Okay, can I determine whether the conclusion is true or not? Okay, so we're looking here where that conditional statement is true, and we're also looking down here where that conditional statement is true. And we're saying, okay, does it matter what the hypothesis is going to be? And it turns out it doesn't. No matter what the hypothesis is, then this conclusion is going to be true. So yes, in this situation, we can conclude that the conclusion is also true because of what we learned here from that truth table. And what that is that's the law of detachment. Okay, it's this logical way of thinking that says, okay, if the hypothesis is true and the whole conditional is true, then the conclusion must also be true. Okay, and we'll do some more examples here in just a minute to kind of give us a feel for what's happening. Intuitively, you already know this law of detachment in your head. We're just going to apply it now to some statements here. Ready? Okay, if Alicia scores an 85 or greater on her test, she will earn an A as her final grade. We do this all the time. Get to the end. Ooh, on the final, if I get an 85 or higher, I'm going to get an A in this class. And then Alicia takes the test here, and she scores, an 89. What can you logically conclude? Okay. If you were Alicia, what did you just get in the class? Okay. The conditional statement here says, if I get 85 or higher, I'm going to get an A. Okay, and turns out I got 85. I got higher than 85. I got an 89. Therefore, Alicia will earn an A as her final grade. Yay, Alicia. Woo! Okay, how about this one? If point D is in the interior of angle ABC, so here it is right here. It's going to make those two consecutive angles there. Then the measure of ABC is equal to the measure of ABD plus the measure of DBC. What can you logically conclude about the measure of ABC? Okay, so my conditional statement says, if the point is in the interior, then this equation is true. And then I tell you, point D is in the interior of angle ABC. Therefore, that equation must be true. I can assume that the measure of those two angles together is the measure of the whole. And we called this the angle addition postulate in lesson 1-1, if you remember. Woohoo! All right, how about this one? If two angles are congruent, then the measure of the two angles are equal to each other. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. What can you logically conclude about the measures of 1 and 2? Okay, yeah. We can conclude that they're equal to one another. Two angles are congruent, then the angles are equal to one another. Therefore, because angle 1 and 2 are congruent, then they're equal to one another. Boom, there we go. How about this one? If you finish the race in under 30 minutes, then you win a prize. You finished the race in 26 minutes. What can you logically conclude? Did you win? Yeah, you'll win the prize. There you go. Another way to think about it is the law of syllogism. And what this says is that if I have two if-then statements, that says, okay, if P then Q is true, and then I have another one that says if Q then R is true, then logically I can make that jump and I can say if P then R is true. Okay, so if both of these conditional statements are true, then I can say there's a third conditional statement that says the first and the last piece are also related. So here we go. Let's look at some examples. If Kenji plays the trumpet, then he plays a brass instrument. If he plays a brass instrument, then he is a member of the marching band. Okay, so my first conditional statement comes from that first sentence right there. If Kenji plays the trumpet, then he plays a brass instrument. So if trumpet, then brass instrument. Okay, my second conditional statement is that second sentence. If he plays a brass instrument, then he is a member of the marching band. And the colors help us see that. Okay, so these two red statements, so the conclusion of the first became the hypothesis of the second, And therefore I can conclude that if Kenji plays the trumpet, then he is a member of the marching band, using the law of syllogism. Okay, let's try this one. If points A, B, and C are collinear and B is between A and C, then BA and BC are opposite rays. If BA and BC are opposite rays, then AB plus BC equals AC. This is the segment addition postulate right there. Fun fact. What can you conclude here? Well, if points A, B, and C are collinear is our hypothesis, then these are opposite rays. That's our conclusion. Now that conclusion became the hypothesis of the next statement. If these are opposite rays, then this statement is true. Therefore, if points A, B, and C are collinear and B is between A and C, then AB plus BC is equal to AC. Segment addition postulate. Boom, ready to try it on your own? Yeah, give it a shot. If an integer is divisible by 6, then it is divisible by 2. If an integer is divisible by 2, then it is an even number. What can you conclude using the law of syllogism? Boom, these are the same. This is the same. Therefore, if an integer is divisible by 6, then it is an even number. Here's one more. If it's a holiday, then you don't have to go to school. If it is Labor Day, then it is a holiday. Not quite as intuitive. It's not written exactly right. But what can we conclude? If it is Labor Day, then I do not have to go to school. And here we kind of flip-flopped them. So this was the conclusion and this was the statement. So these two are kind of flipped. If it is Labor Day, then I do not have to go to school. Okay, how about this one? Now, use whichever one you want. Give it a shot. If you are climbing a mountain at an altitude of 28,500 feet or higher, then you are on the tallest mountain above sea level on Earth. If you're on the tallest mountain above sea level on Earth, then you are on Mount Everest, of course. Here you are climbing on a mountain at an altitude of 29,000 feet. Is this a better law of detachment problem or law of syllogism problem? Do we have two conditional statements or one conditional statement? I see one conditional statement and then a hypothesis there. You are climbing on a mountain at an altitude of 29,000 feet. So where are you? Where are you going to be located? There you go. You are on Mount Everest, of course. That's the law of detachment there for us to look at. We actually use the law of syllogism to get here, and then the law of detachment to go one step further. All right, how about this one? Martin walks his dog before dinner every day. Martin is now eating his dinner. Using the law of detachment, what conclusions can you draw from these true statements? Martin walks his dog before dinner every day. Martin is now eating his dinner. So what did Martin do already? Martin's already walked the dog. Boom, we did it. Okay, we talked about two ways of using deductive reasoning, this law of detachment and the law of syllogism. You already are doing these in your life. You're already excited about it. You're already building those dendrites in your brain. And you just gave your brain an excellent workout for the last few minutes. And now it is time for you to go work on your assignment for the day. Here it is. Do that 1-6 Math Excel assignment and complete the lesson quiz. Make sure you holler out to your teachers if you have any questions. And my friends, if you like what you saw today, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Here, have a great day, Mustangs.